Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Parents, Teens, and the Law. This is a presentation that we partnered with District 87 on a number of occasions to put on, and I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Glendale Heights Police Department and Glenbard District 87. A lot of you may go, well, we're in Carroll Stream, this is Glenbard North, why is Glendale Heights doing this? And it's because we're all part of the greater District 87 community.
Thank you, Chief. We very much appreciate the partnership with the Police Department and law enforcement. And I just, too, would like to welcome people to Glenbard North. We appreciate your interest, and I wanted to thank our panel for your leadership and contribution toward keeping our students and families safe. So I just also wanted to quickly say that from a school's perspective, we are deeply committed to a comprehensive approach where we know that our students will be safe and our students will be chemically free with the cooperation and the collaboration of law enforcement, with the State's Attorney's Office, and parents. So thanks a lot for being here.
Just a few notes to go over just before we begin this evening. Our next program and our final program of the Glenbard Parents Series is going to be held on May 5th. Those of you that are here have heard me talk about our generous benefactor, Larry Goodman, he's the grandparent of a granddaughter who died of a heroin overdose, and he donated $100,000 to this series and Glenbard schools. And when you come and you support this program, it means so much. It's a beautiful evening. I know there's a million and one places that you could be, but I know when you go home and you tell your parents, you are the parents, when you tell your children that you are here tonight, you might, but please tell your children that you are here tonight to get some important information to keep them safe. And your support of our programs and education here at Glenbard West really means so much. So I see some of the same faces who've been with us month after month after month, and I'm really grateful. Because of you, we will keep this going. Last program, again, is with Dr. Joanne Deek. Dr. Deek is the author of several books on raising girls. She's giving two important programs, one on May 5th at 1:30 at the Marquardt Administration Center, Helping Girls Thrive. That is the title of her best-selling book. The program at 7 o'clock at night at Glenbard South is called Boys and Girls, Significant Differences from the Neck Up, and how these differences impact learning and more. So I hope you can join us for that. Thank you to the Meadows for once again donating 600 delicious cookies for our event. Thank you to all the parents who work behind the scenes, Amy Pearl, who always organizes our volunteers so they can hand out the flyers. We have evaluations. I hope you'll fill them out, and we hope to see you at our final program of the year. So, without further ado, we will begin our program this evening, Parents, Teens, Parties, and the Law. Our first speaker on our distinguished panel is Linda Lewaniak, who will also act as moderator. If you are here in this program and Spanish is your native language, I encourage you to go next door where the identical program is being presented in Spanish. Linda is a clinical social worker and clinical director for addiction medicine at Alexian Brothers Behavioral Health Hospital. She is the director of their outpatient services program and the director of their addictions medicine program. After Linda, you will hear from Robert Berlin, who is our new DuPage County State's Attorney's Office. I really welcome you. Thank you so much. We know about your busy schedule, and we're very grateful that you're here tonight. Another friend to this program is Paul Marchese, Associate Court Judge. Did I say that right? Okay, good. Followed by Officer Somerville, Glenbard School Liaison Officer, Resource Officer at 3 of the Glenbard schools, North, East, and West. Following him will be Tashi Lukens, a representative from the Secretary of State's office, and then finally you will hear from Doug Pettit, who will share a personal story. So again, without further ado, Linda Lewaniak.
Good evening. Welcome, parents and teens here. I have a sheet and it says on there current trends for teens. If you you want to pull that out, I want to take a couple of moments. What I'm going to speak about is a little bit about our current trends in substance abuse for teenagers. I'm also going to talk a little bit then about what is substance abuse in a very simple kind of way, and then talk a little bit about what parents can do and how we can intervene. First of all, there's a study, I don't know if you've read the papers in the last week or two, the study came out in 2010, from drugfree.org, that talked about the 22nd Annual Partnership, which is Attitude Tracking Study, which is about teens' usage of substances in the United States. And I have a couple of different ones that I want to talk about. The first one here is marijuana, and it basically said that teens aged 9th through 12th grade were significantly more likely than in 2008 to have smoked marijuana. And what that means is that we've got a significant increase. When I went through our treatment program this morning and looked at the teens that are in it, you can see that over half are smoking pot. That's very important to me because marijuana has increased in its THC level probably 2 and 3 times. Teenagers have gotten very good at buying, growing, and selling marijuana. And I think some of the panel here will talk a little bit about consequences of doing some of those things and what that means. But it's important because almost half the teens report by the time they're 12th grade of trying marijuana. That's important to me because does anyone know when's the last third of the brain grow? Anybody out there know? I can't see. This is like a black cloud up there. So, can anybody say when does the last third brain grow?
18 to 24.
Yep, 18 to 24. And if you think about it, and you're smoking pot, using alcohol, thank you very much. Smoking pot, using alcohol, using other types of things, it really causes problems within your brain. And one of the things that we talk about with addiction is that it's a brain disorder. And it's important to note that brain changes happen significantly. And as you put these things in your body, your brain's affected. So that's important. Ecstasy, very sad to say, is increasing. There was a significant decrease in ecstasy between 2004 and 2006. It really decreased. Since about 2007, it started to creep up. And what we found is that the teenagers that used ecstasy in that mid-2000s is there was a big national education program, and I don't know if anybody remembers it, but ecstasy, basically, if you asked a teenager, why don't you do ecstasy, it's because it puts holes in your brain. If you ask teenagers now, they don't know that. Those programs have been pulled, people don't talk about it, and we are not educated enough. But even one use of ecstasy can cause holes in someone's brain. And that's really important to understand. When I was listening to Gilda talk about the grandfather that donated the money for this program, I'm going to talk a little bit about heroin in a minute, but heroin overdoses are up again. We'll talk about how heroin is affected here in Illinois and in Chicago in particular, so I'll get to that. But again, substance abuse is on the rise, and this is very important that parents pay attention to what that means for their teens. Prescription drugs, farming parties are still growing. Farming parties is when teenagers go into the parents' medicine cabinets, take whatever medicine, put it in a bowl, and then throughout the party have alcohol, take whatever pills out and eat it. That's called a farming party. So again, we see that as being an issue, and that's starting on a rise again, and seeing more of that. If you look at from this particular study, 25% of prescription drugs, 1 out of 4 teens basically use prescription drugs that are not prescribed by a doctor. It's very cheap, and it's a high. It's usually Vicodin, OxyContin, oxycodone. What are they doing with Vicodin in particular is they're taking it and crushing it and then snorting it so they can get a different high. From that, they move to heroin. And if you look at the statistics in this particular study, which is nationwide, it basically said heroin use remains low. That's correct, except for here in Chicago. I would say that there's any point in time, 25 to 35% of our teenagers who are in our treatment programs are for heroin dependency. And that's important to know. What has happened is that, and I'm sure you've seen some of the studies that are out and some of the reports that are out, is Chicago is the heroin capital. We have 4 types of heroin here, and we can easily access them. It's basically $10 a bag, and initially teens start snorting them, and they go from snorting that to using IVs. And when they use it, they won't put IVs in their arms, they put it between their toes, or under their armpits, or in other places so that people can't see that. And I think it's important because this is heroin in general, what it does is it's very calming type of drug. It produces a high that's euphoric and you feel kind of one with the world. And it's important because teens get very hooked into that. And if you look at some of the things that they talked about this study is that teens are using substances to relieve stress, relieve problems at home. That there's not just out there for having fun. And I'll talk a little bit about what I mean about that in a minute. But above all, above heroin, prescription drugs, ecstasy, marijuana, the #1 abused drug for teenagers is alcohol. And I think that's incredibly important. When I've got teens in the ERs and they have alcohol intoxication, parents will tell me it's just alcohol. Or if they get alcohol intoxication and marijuana, it's just marijuana. To me, those are big issues. We've got a teenager who's got alcohol intoxication, they can die. Alcohol poisoning is on a rise. What they did in the colleges in the last 4 years is they put in counselors to just deal with alcohol use. What we've done in the last year in the school systems is we've taken out counselors and we don't have them in the high school systems dealing with substance abuse. And in fact, we've taken that education out. Why is our increase in going up? So when we look at some of the statistics and what some of these teenagers are reporting to me, I think it's important. And it's not on Friday and Saturday that we're talking about using substances. We're talking about during the week, 3 to 6, when mom and dads are not home, they can rate cabinets and so they know where to go. So I think it's important when we start to think about substance abuse, we think about what's in your house, what's in your cabinet, what's in your medicine cabinet, how do you look at it? You know, what do you do with that? What do you think about it? How do you view substances in your household? One other point to point out is that cigarette smoking is also on a rise. Cigarette smoking to me is a real good predictor of what's coming in the future in regard to kids getting more access and teens getting more access. The average age a kid starts to drink is the first drink is 14, and the average age that there's drinking on a regular basis is by 15. That's a sophomore in high school. That's sometimes a freshman in high school. That's very young. If you start to drink regularly before the age of 15, you are about 4 times more likely to have behavioral problems or substance abuse as an adult. So just not to have kids drink past after 16 is important. So I think those are just some critical short points about substance abuse. If you keep going through, you know, one of the things people ask me is they say, well, what can parents do? What can we really do? My first question to you is ask. Ask your teenagers what they're doing. Find out. The next one is get educated about what substance abuse and dependency is. Try to figure out what that means. What's your belief about use? And then on here it says, first of all, you know, I get a lot of parents who will say, well, my kids are experimenting. Experimentation is one time. That's it. That's experimentation. Anything after that's abuse. Because if you're using substances to mood alter, that becomes abuse. So if someone, you know, when I get an 18-year-old who's a senior in college who comes in after he's been arrested for possession of alcohol by a minor, and he says to me, or she says to me, you know, it's just alcohol. I like to drink beer for the taste. I say, really? Has anybody, you know, I don't know if anybody remembered their first taste of beer, but let me tell you, it doesn't taste great. How about whiskey? You know, what's a big thing right now? Jack Daniels or Johnny Walker. Have you ever tasted Johnny Walker? Ugh, it's disgusting. It's not something that you wake up and say, oh, I think I might like this. So again, you know, teenagers who are exposed to these things and are continually using this on a regular basis, what does that mean? Then we look into just a dependency. What does it really mean? It's when substance use becomes the use primary means of recreation, coping, or both, or having fun. It's when tolerance and withdrawal begins. Let's talk about heroin overdoses for a second. The reason why teenagers or young people overdose is what happens is they'll start they'll go into treatment. And then they come out of treatment and they go back to using the same amount they were using prior to that. And the problem is once you stop using heroin, there's a significant tolerance that happens, and then when you stop using it, that tolerance is gone. You go back to using it and you die from an overdose. So people will tell me, well, you know, detoxing from heroin kills you. No. It's when people get sober and start to look at things, they go back to what their regular use was, and then they overdose and die from those drugs. Or they drive some type of combination. So again, these drugs are dangerous in regard to how teens do it. Some myths that I've heard about just detoxing. For instance, if you put a penny underneath your tongue, your breathalyzer won't. Their breathalyzer won't. It shows 00. You guys know that that's not true. Another one is if you drink vinegar, that you can get a clean screen because you're toxing your body. That's not true. So there's a lot of myths out there in regard to what that looks like. There's a lot of negative consequences that are starting to develop when they're teenagers. So initially I thought, when teens, could they really be dependent? Absolutely. So again, parents, educate yourself, understand, ask questions, figure out what it is that your teens are doing. So what are some signs to look for? I listed a whole bunch of signs here, but just some things that I think are important ones are change in relationships or friends. If kids can't wake up in the morning, on Saturday or Sunday morning, what were they doing that night? Or on Monday, they're very lethargic. There's sudden mood changes. They have a different set of peers that come in, peers that don't show up. They are hyperactive when they used to be calm. All of those types of things are ways to start to look at different signs. Is it behavioral issues? Is it substance abuse? What needs to happen? Cash flow. I've got teenagers who tell me that I can sell marijuana and make more money than a McDonald's. It's true. Absolutely. So is there an increase in cash flow? So what is your teen doing? Where are you? What are you doing with your teen? How are you paying attention to them? Those are all important things to start to look at when we're looking at, is there substance abuse or behavioral types of issues? What about intervention? People see that movie on TV, Intervention, right? I don't watch that show because I think that it really glamorizes what this is about. Because for me, an intervention can be simple as a talk about substance abuse all the way to a full-blown rehab. So intervention to me can be lots of different things and lots of different options for parents. The most important thing is talk to your children. Find out what they're doing. Meet their friends. One of the things that I think is important is, we text nowadays, and I'm a great texter, I love it. But at the same time, have somebody call you from a landline. Are they really where they say they're at? It used to be that, you don't know, you have to call mom or dad from a landline. Now, some people don't even have them. So do you really know where your kids are at? Do you really know what they're doing? So what do those interventions look like? I think it's important to model or get an assessment for your kids. Get somebody who understands substance abuse. Model positive behavior. Goal of families is to help develop problem-solving skills. How do you do it? How do they do it? Do you tell them, hey, you really do a good job thinking about that? What are so encourage healthy things, praise. Make sure you know their spirit. Make sure that you know that you're supporting your kids, and they know and they feel the support. And support means you're around, and I think that's an important piece. Spirituality, is there some type of spirituality that you're involved in? Those are all protective factors when we're talking about teens. And I know that this is almost the last part of the series, and I'm sure you heard a lot about protective factors. There's lots of things parents can do. When I get parents to say, there's nothing I can do, that's when I say educate, ask, go seek a professional, and kind of follow through with what it is you think. If you think your child or your teen has a substance abuse problem, don't ignore it, do something about it, ask. I'm going to go from here and have State's Attorney Robert Berlin talk a little bit, and he's got a PowerPoint, it's really fancy, so we worked really hard on it. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you. What I want to do is talk about some of the laws, both criminal and civil, some of the ramifications that come with not only underage drinking, but for parents having parties at your house where alcohol is served, what can happen. And the reality is that times have changed significantly. Parents, since the days when you went through high school. It's a much different culture and a different climate now. And the reason for it, obviously, is everybody is more aware of what the consequences are. Parental responsibilities. With two exceptions, it's a Class A misdemeanor for any person to deliver, sell, or give alcohol to a minor. The only two exceptions are this. You can give alcohol to your child if you're in the privacy of your own house, and you as a parent are supervising them. That's your own child. And the other exception is when a minor consumes alcohol in the course of a religious ceremony or service. And that's it. That is a Class A misdemeanor to sell or give alcohol to a minor. Class A misdemeanors are punishable by up to a year in the county jail and a $2,500 fine. Some adults think that it's okay if they host a drinking party for their teens and they collect all the keys from the guests first. Let's have all the kids come, take their car keys, put them in a basket, and that's okay. It's not okay. It's against the law to knowingly authorize, enable, or permit consumption of alcoholic liquor by underage invitees of your children at your residence. Ordinarily, a parent or guardian that commits this offense, again, Class A misdemeanor, punishable by up to a year in jail and a minimum fine of $500. However, where the drinking party directly or indirectly results in great bodily harm or death to any person, the parent or guardian is now guilty of a Class 4 felony. I'm sure many of you recall a few years ago, there was a couple in Deerfield, the Hutzels, who had a party at their house for their children. Two of the boys left the party, they were intoxicated, got into a car, and they actually drove the car into a tree at the edge of their driveway, and both of them were killed. Now at the time, the parents were only facing misdemeanors. Because of that incident, the law was changed. It's now a Class 4 felony if there's great bodily harm or somebody dies as a result of having one of these alcoholic parties. So again, it's a realization how serious this issue is. You just can't have these kinds of parties in your house. Let's suppose now your teen is having a party with his or her friends from school, and you discover a half-empty keg in the basement. Here's what the law says, okay? Any person, parent or teen, guilty of a Class A misdemeanor where you knowingly permit a gathering at your house where any one or more of the persons is under 21, and the following factors also apply. The person occupying the residence knows that any person under the age of 21 is unlawfully in possession of alcohol or is consuming any alcoholic beverage. And the person occupying the residence knows that the person under the age of 21 leaves the residence in an intoxicated condition. What about the situation where you're going to rent a hotel room for your kids? They can have a party, it's not going to be at your house. There's laws that apply to that as well, and the law says that you can't do that. If you rent a hotel or a motel room for the purpose or with the knowledge that such room is being used for the consumption of alcohol by persons under the age of 21, that is a Class A misdemeanor. Again, punishable by up to a year in the county jail. Other criminal charges can also apply when in situations where parents are providing alcohol to minors. Reckless conduct, contributing to the criminal delinquency of a minor, or endangering the health or life of a child. Those are all charges that can be brought against parents in situations where you're providing alcohol to minors. In addition to criminal penalties, there are also civil penalties that can apply. The Drug or Alcohol Impaired Minor Responsibility Act. This act makes it any person 18 years of age or older who willfully supplies alcohol or illegal drugs to a person under the age of 18 and causes the impairment of such person, you're liable for death or injuries to persons or property caused by the impairment of that person. Okay, so you supply the alcohol or the drugs to a person under the age of 18, and even though it's their acts, they go out and they do something to somebody else, you can be held civilly liable. And under this act, a person or the surviving spouse and next of kin of any person who is injured by an impaired person under the age of 18, they have a right for a civil action against you or jointly and severally for damages against any person. When we talk about damages, we talk about economic damages, non-economic damages, costs related to litigation, punitive damages, and attorney's fees. And these can run into the thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even more than that, depending on the type of injury that can be caused. I want to talk briefly about a parental responsibility case, People versus Zagonyi and Pomelo. This case was a DuPage County case. In 2005, Joanne Zagonyi threw a graduation party for her son, Kenneth Pomelo, at her home in Carroll Stream. Pomelo was age 20. He had just graduated from DeVry University. There's about 50 or 75 people that attended that party that evening. Nearly all of them were underage. One of the guests who attended the party was a 16-year-old by the name of Jonathan Pettit, who was a classmate of Pomelo's younger sister. He attended the party with a friend. According to witnesses, they were told that they could not be at the party unless they were drinking. So John and his friend began to drink heavily. First they were drinking beer. They switched to vodka and rum. And in a short period of time, John became intoxicated. Eventually, he passed out and he was kicked out of the party, and he was allowed to walk home. Even though he lived a short distance away, John never made it home. He was missing for 3 days, and after 3 days of frantic searching, authorities discovered John's body in a retention pond just behind the Zagony's home. The autopsy showed that John had died of accidental drowning, and it also showed that at the time of his death, his blood alcohol content was 0.208, which is about 2.5 times the legal limit. There was an investigation by the Carroll Stream Police Department, and the investigation showed that Kenneth Pomelo was present at the party during the time that John was there, and Joanne Zagonyi was present at the residence while the party was occurring. And witnesses had suggested that both of them were intoxicated during the course of this party. Zagonyi and Pomelo were charged with a number of misdemeanor offenses, including endangering the life of a child, contributing to the delinquency of a child, allowing minors to consume alcohol at her home, and also unlawfully providing alcohol to minors. Now, the law at the time only allowed for Class A misdemeanors, but as I told you, after the incident in Deerfield a few years ago, that law has been changed. These would now be Class 4 felonies. A Class 4 felony is punishable by 1 to 3 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. So in this particular case, both defendants were facing up to a year in jail, and they were sentenced to 24 days or 4 weekends in the county jail and fines of $500, and also ordered to perform community service. I want to talk briefly about DUIs, especially what happens to minors who are drinking, whether they're drinking underage or even if they're not driving. Just some facts related to DUIs. In 2008, 408 people in the state of Illinois were killed in alcohol-related crashes. Since January 1st, more than 1,235 misdemeanor DUI cases have been charged in DuPage County alone. And that doesn't include felony DUIs, or what we'll talk about are the zero tolerance tickets. When we talk about the cost, and not just the cost to society, but the actual cost in dollars of a DUI conviction, it's over $16,000. By the time you're done with attorney's fees, fines and court costs, court-ordered treatment and counseling, lost wages, and license reinstatement fees, that's your average cost. DUI penalties, I'm not going to get into all of them, but basically a first-time DUI offender can get supervision, but that's not automatic. But if there's a conviction, that comes with a revocation of driver's license. If the DUI results in great bodily harm, the penalties go up severely. If a first-time DUI conviction, if the driver is under the age of 21 at the time of the arrest, the revocation is for a minimum of 2 years. Another fact about DUIs is they can never be expunged from your record. Unlike some other offenses where you can get supervision, after a period of time those can be expunged, DUIs are not expunged from your record. They stay on your driving history. DUI offenders have to undergo intensive alcohol and drug counseling at their own expense. It's mandated. It's monitored by the court. All DUI offenders have to attend a victim impact panel. And generally, DUI sentences include significant amounts of community service, or time spent in the Sheriff's Work Alternative Program, or jail time. As I said, if the DUI results in great bodily harm or personal disfigurement to another person, we get into felonies, and the punishment goes up severely. DUI causing great bodily harm to somebody else, you can get up to 12 years in prison, and if there's a death involved, it can go up to 14 years, or if 2 or more people are killed, up to 28 years in prison. The reality is, folks, these cases are punished severely in DuPage County because everyone realizes the significant risk to the public that driving while drunk causes. I just want to talk about a couple more things. Zero tolerance are under the age of 21. If you're driving with any amount of alcohol in your breath, even if you're not drunk, you hit that .08, any amount of alcohol, you can get a zero tolerance ticket, and that is an automatic suspension of your driver's license. A first-time offender is looking at a 3-month suspension, and a second-time offender, it's a year suspension. Any amount of alcohol greater than .00. You also get a suspension if you refuse to submit to a blood or breath test. Generally, persons who are issued zero tolerance tickets, they're not criminally charged with DUI. However, the police can also charge a minor with unlawful consumption of alcohol by a minor. Unlawful consumption of alcohol by a minor, even if you're not driving, if you're at a party, you're under the age of 21, you're drinking alcohol, you're consuming alcohol, if you're convicted, that carries a suspension of your driver's license, even though you're not driving at the time. It's a 6-month suspension for the first conviction, 12 months for a second conviction. Even if you get supervision, your license will be suspended by the Secretary of State for 3 months. Last thing I want to mention are fake IDs. Those can be misdemeanors or they can be felonies. If you have a fake ID that is altered, where you change the birth date, you change the name, that is a Class 4 felony. A fraudulent identification card that contains false information, again, 1 to 3 years. I mean, these are serious offenses. It wasn't that way when many of you were in high school, but it is that way now. It's a different climate and it's a different culture, and we've all seen what happens when teenagers are at parties, when they're drinking or when they're doing drugs, and they get behind the wheel of a car. It's a hazard to them, and it's a hazard to the public, the innocent public, driving out on the street. And unfortunately, despite all of our efforts, what we see time and time again is tragic. And it's always innocent people that end up getting hurt or killed. So everyone has a responsibility. Parents, you have a responsibility to know the law and to enforce it. You know, our children can have fun. There's plenty of activities they can do at parties. But when they're under 21, they cannot be drinking or using drugs.
Thank you, State's Attorney Robert Berlin, for all that information. I think it was very good. What we're going to do is, the State's Attorney Robert Berlin talked about a case, the Pettit case, and we have Doug Pettit, the father of John, who died, and I want to be able to have Doug go and talk a little bit about what happened at that night. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you. I've been doing this for about 4.5 years now. It's the first time I sat down and someone told my story before I did. That's all right. So a lot of this is going to be, but it's going to be from my perspective, because I'm the father, and it's a lot less clinical when it's so personal to you. So I've done this, like I said, for about 4.5 years. I've spoken to a number of student assemblies throughout the Chicagoland area and to a number of community forums. And I'm always appreciative when I can come here and work with the good people of Glendale Heights, because I know they're focused on this. This is the 4th year in a row I've spoke with them. This is the biggest turnout I think I've seen at this event in the last 4 years, so I'm really pleased to see this, and I hope we're connecting. As was mentioned, the official cause of death for my son was a cardiac arrest due to drowning. But I'm here to tell you that it was the booze that killed him, along with all the poor choices that went on that night. A lot of decisions Jonathan made after he got the booze in him, I'm here to tell you, weren't typical Jonathan Pettit decisions. There's no way he would have walked into that dirty, stinking water behind that townhouse if he hadn't been full of alcohol. As was mentioned, I didn't hear about the beer until tonight. A couple of things I learned. I did know about the vodka, and the vodka was the poison that I heard about. Jonathan made his choices. I wish I had a chance to talk to him sometime. I wish I would have had that opportunity to tell him what he could have done, the better decisions he could have made, but I never got to do that. That was taken away from me. It was taken away from me partially because of decisions Jonathan made that night, and that's some of the things I talked to him about. But also, there was a parent in the house that night. And I have been told that the Carroll Stream Police went there twice that night. But she just promised to turn down the music and she closed the door. It wasn't until later that I was told that 60 to 70 underage kids, a lot of them out of this high school, a lot of them that signed athletic codes of conduct, were in that party. Just kids being kids. I don't begrudge anybody that. I remember what it was like when I was 17 and 18. I dodged a few bullets in my day, so I understand that. In my career in manufacturing management, I've listened to a lot of experts, and they say that the adult has to get the message on average 7 times before it really clicks with them. That's average 7 times. I think if we're going to talk about underage binge drinking and parental responsibility and how those things connect, I think we've got to keep bringing the message a lot more than 7 times. Because not only are we talking to the adults, but we're talking to the teenagers who you heard earlier, their brains are still developing. I think it was 1/3 you said, between the ages of 18 and 24. That's a lot of stuff going on up there. You're graduating out of high school and you're getting ready to go to college, and you're getting ready to transition into adulthood. The last thing to do is with all that stuff going on is to mix it up with booze and drugs and that sort of thing. It's not like you're the first generation that's done it, because I'm here to tell you mine did, and I'm here to tell you the people before me did, and I've got pictures of my grandparents holding me where they got a bottle of beer in one hand and they're cradling me as a 1-year-old right there. This stuff has been going on forever. And what we're here to talk about is not only do we have to slow it down, but we possibly got to try to stop it. And why not today? Why not get the energy today? I work with a lot of folks out of Schaumburg. It's called the Alliance Against Intoxicated Motorists. I know a lot of people up here are familiar with them, and I work with a lot of parents. And they've lost children too. Typically, I get sent to high schools by AIM, and I go there with parents, and they've lost a child, usually through an accident, no fault of their own. They were hit by a drunk driver or something like that. And one of the things we talk about when we're out there, and when we look out in the audience, we say, we want to connect with that one person. In the beginning, when I started doing this, I was a little greedy, and I said, oh, you guys are crazy. We can do more than one. We can connect with 10. We can connect with 50. But as I've come to do this for 4.5 years, I know, one's pretty good. One's not a bad number. And if I do this 30, 40, 50, 100 times, that's how many people I connected with. And if everybody up here speaks and they connect with one, well, that sort of thing can grow, and we can energize, and we can grow this. Because a lot in my mind, this is low-hanging fruit. When you hear stories about where the kids can access the alcohol, usually between the hours of 3 and 6 in their parents' home, they're not really working too hard. It's pretty easy to get to that. When you got a parent like Joanne Zagone, who sadly I had to see her picture again, you got somebody like that who advocates for responsibility as a parent. Well, some of those people, maybe she should be out here visiting tonight, somebody like her, because typically what I'm going to guess that shows up in the audience here tonight are folks who already get it. That's why you came out here tonight. Like Gilda said, it's a beautiful night. You could be doing a million other things, but you came out here, and I applaud you. I applaud you for coming out, but you get it. I just wish we could get the Joanne Zagones of the world to come out to this sort of thing. I want to talk a little bit about Jonathan, because I don't get to talk about it a lot, and I'm going to tell you my perspective of what went on those 4 days, because it was 4 days of, I don't like to think about it. It was a hot summer night in June. The last time I saw Jonathan, he was in the house around 9:15. It was a Friday night. I'd been up in Minneapolis all week long. I'd been on a business trip, and I'd just come back, got in the house about 8 o'clock. And he was going out with his friend Roy, and Roy had just gotten his driver's license that day, and they were pretty happy, and they were going up to the Town Center Festival. I wish I could remember what the last thing I said to him, but I didn't know. I didn't know this was going to be a seminal moment in my life, and that's how fast it happens. I just might have said, had a good night, see you later, something like that. I was tired. I'd had a long drive, so I laid down on the couch, and a couple hours later I went upstairs and I went to bed. Jonathan's mom was sitting up waiting for him. Now when Jonathan left, he had a curfew, and his curfew was 11 o'clock. It had been 11 o'clock for a period of time. But he was doing like a lot of teenagers do. He's trying to push open that envelope of authority a little bit, and we're trying to seal it back up. Well, did what he typically do, and we do that dance that we do, and Jonathan's mom tells me that she called around 11:15, said, hey, you're late. Curfew, come on home. He said, yeah, Mom, I'll be right there. She waited about another 20 minutes and called. The phone rang one time and shut off. So that's the last contact she had with him. Now, she sat up on that couch all night long wondering what would happen to her boy. She knew it was problematic because she knew he had left the house with Roy. She got a hold of Roy's parents. Turns out about 1:30 in the morning, a car had come screaming up in front of Roy's house. They brought Roy up to the front door, a number of kids, slammed him up against the door, rang the doorbell, and rang away. Roy was so intoxicated, they had to rush him over to DuPage Hospital over here at Winfield and have his stomach pumped. He was incoherent. There was no way that Roy was going to be able to help my wife, Jonathan's mother, on where he was at. They had no idea where he was at. He couldn't remember anything. As for myself, I was in bed. I didn't get that tickle they say you're supposed to get, when you have this great loss. I slept right through it. I got up the next morning. I knew my family was going to Great America. I was pretty energized. I was up about 6:30, 7 o'clock. I walked across the hallway and I looked, and there was Jonathan's room. And his bed hadn't been slept in. What is this? And I walked down and I saw Jonathan's mom, and she said, your son did not come home last night. And the first thing I thought is, what story is he going to tell me? What am I going to have to deal with to put up with this? And I walked around the house and I thought about it, and I thought about it a little bit, and then that thing started bugging me. Something was wrong. And it was around 9:15, I met up with a friend of mine up at the Carroll Stream Police Department, and I said, look, I think I have a problem here. I can't find my son. And I think it's bigger than what appears to be on the surface. I think there was a large party last night. I think he was there, and I'd like him found. They said, we understand, Mr. Pettit, we're going to tell you something. If we find him, we find out he was at that party, we're going to bust him. So I got no problem with that. I just want my boy back. So I went home and I waited. Around 2 p.m. in the afternoon, an officer, George, from the Carroll Stream Police Department called me and asked me if I was ready to hear some tough news. I said, yeah, I can deal with that. He said Jonathan was seen at that party last night. He was extremely intoxicated. Matter of fact, he probably came to butt into some jokes some of the boys were pulling wedgies on him and pouring beers on him. I'd heard him point a couple weeks later that some of the boys in there may have even urinated on him. I didn't know what to do. I'm his dad, and I'm supposed to be able to do something, and I couldn't do anything about it. Well, the next few days for us were just a disaster. I hated it when Lieutenant O'Brien came to my house with a social outfit saying they were going to start diving in this lake. Mitchell Lake is really a retention pond, looking for Jonathan. I hated looking at my watch every couple of minutes, hoping something would happen. I hated calling his mom's cell phone, just hoping that the phone would ring. And I hated going outside every morning and looking underneath the bushes and around the trees, just thinking, maybe this is just a nightmare and he's out there someplace. But he never was. I hated every bit of it. They found Jonathan on June 20th. It was pretty early in the morning. His body just kind of floated to the surface. The police came and they got us. And as I'd been throughout this whole ordeal, I was just a total wreck. I was just holding his picture to my chest like this. Jonathan's mom, she was the strong one. And she came downstairs and said, Doug, just sit there. I'll go with him. And I rolled my feet off the couch and I turned on the TV and I looked. They're on Channel 2. They were carrying him out of the water. And I sat there and I said, I just can't just sit here. So I hopped in my car and I drove over and I said, Daddy's coming. And I sped up there. They had 2 tents set up. In the one tent was some of the police officers and some of the divers and Jonathan's mom. And I walked in, the social advocates, Mindy. I knew what was in the other tent. I knew what I was going to have to do in a little bit. So they came in and they talked to us. They said, well, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Pettit, he's been in this water for a little bit. He suffered some damage. He's been in there about 4 days. So we don't think that's something that you guys need to see. So they covered up his face and they covered up his hands. We went in there. He was lying on his back. He had his left leg crossed over his right at about the ankle. His arms were locked rigidly in position. And I knelt down by his calf and I touched it. And it was just hard as a rock. I knew at that point I didn't get to be his dad anymore. I can't tell you how that feels. Decision by a parent to provide alcohol and to abdicate responsibility. Like I said, there were over 60 or 70 kids in a two-room townhouse that night. That's not just a terrible decision, that's a tragic decision. A beautiful son, brother, cousin, nephew, grandson, teammate, and student at Glenbard North High School. He walked in these halls. He wrestled on those mats. He played on that football field. He died somewhere between 1:30 and 2 a.m. on June 18, 2005. He died alone. I'm going to guess he was pretty confused and probably pretty damn scared. He was our firstborn child and he was just 16 years old. Don't let me kid you, this is not the first time I know Jonathan had something with alcohol. He's not an innocent angel, and that's one of the things I wish I could have talked to him about. A couple months before I lost him, I was in the garage. We have a refrigerator in the garage. And there were 4 beers in there. There had been 4 beers sitting there for months since my brother had last been there. And I went in there and grabbed a soda, and I looked, and there were 2 beers. I walked back in the house, and he was sitting there watching television. I said, how did you and, I won't mention the name, enjoy those 2 beers? And Jonathan was good at a lot of things, but he never became a very good liar. And his head just kind of hung down and his mouth hung open. And I did what you call at work, I gave him verbal warning. I don't know if I'd have done anything else, if that would have had any reaction. I don't know. Because at the end of the day, when he went out that night, those decisions were his. He knew the rules. I'm sure most parents have said most things to most of the kids out here, you know the rules. But when you get out there on your own, it's still your decision. He didn't make any, he made a series of bad ones in the last night of his life. As for myself, maybe I'd have given him a tougher warning, but I grew up in a family of, well, I had a tavern owner as a grandmother, I had a heavy beer drinker as a dad. One of my chores when I was 7, 8, 9 years old was to get Dad a beer. And I got Dad's a lot of beers every night. So for me, I never saw alcohol as something to fear. So maybe when Jonathan did it that one time, there was probably a part of me that made the stupid thing, stupid thought, rite of passage. And it's not. It's not. It's dangerous stuff. There's been a lot that's gone on in Carroll Stream since we lost him. My wife and I have we formed a not-for-profit. It's called Parents and Teens Together. We have a fun run every year. We try to give scholarship money. Jonathan Pettit Memorial Scholarship. We'll be giving out our 5th one this year. We just didn't stop. And we got up and wanted to do something. And that's why I'm out here communicating with you folks tonight. And I said in the beginning, you know, there's our goal, that we want to reach that one person. And I don't know who that one person is out here tonight. But if you're sitting out here thinking that it might be you, it probably is. Thank you very much.
Doug, thank you very much. That's very brave. I've actually heard Doug speak several times before, and every time I hear and think about it, I get chills. And it just reminds me about the dangers and what we need to do. And remember what I said, ask, talk, educate. Thank you, Doug. Now we're going to have Judge Marchese. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Doug. That was just excellent. And actually, what I'd like to do to start out here, much like you folks, first of all, I want to thank actually parents, and I guess there's kids here today too. There's students here who are here perhaps bribed by the possibility of extra credit points or something. I'm not sure. But are there students here who are here and they want to be make sure that they're here to either get the points or yes? Raise your hand. There's at least one. All right. Just there's other things you guys could be doing tonight, and I understand that. I think it speaks to your leadership skills, and it speaks to you as a person that you're here. You're probably not the people who have to hear this, but you can take this message back to the other student. You can be the designated driver. You can be the person who stops a tragedy from happening yourself. As to the parents, I can't put it any plainer than saying I think it speaks to how much you love your kids that you're here today. Again, there's other things you could be doing tonight. You gave up your night to be here, as did everyone who's here on this panel. Everybody's here because they want to be. Everybody's here because they're volunteering to be here. So thank you for being here. First of all, I want to say that State's Attorney Berlin put together some a great PowerPoint and used some serious technology to put together his talk, and I did too. With that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to start out by talking to the kids who are here, and I guess there's a few of you here, and then I'm going to move my way to talking to the parents. I'd like to talk just more generally a little bit about alcohol use and kind of the ramifications. I had the pleasure of being an assistant state's attorney for 18 years. Then I was fortunate enough to be a judge, and I was in traffic court, and I got to see those kids who came in with the possession of alcohol charges, and I got to see the alcohol charges when I was in the traffic and the misdemeanor division and in the felony division. So I'm fortunate enough to have worked in that capacity and things like this in my time as an attorney and as a judge. Kids who are here, you're all here, and you're all smart. The fact that you're here makes me think that you all care about the decisions that you make, and that none of you are going to make any bad decisions. The problem is that the statistics tell us otherwise. And I'm going to say it plainly put, that alcohol use at your age is a bad decision. It causes bad decisions. The physiological effects of using alcohol and then thinking causes you to make a bad decision. Everybody who's here, look around you. Everybody who's here knows a family member or a friend who's been either a victim of or who has been arrested for an alcohol-related offense. Every single person. And you know, our society, really the media, sort of blames it, or you can blame it on the media, but it sort of causes us to think that alcohol is a positive thing. Have a beer, you'll be cool. Have a beer, you'll be sophisticated. You'll be perceived as fitting in and being cool. Have some drinks, go ahead, kids, go ahead and see what happens. But just don't get caught. First of all, let's talk about the real ramifications, the first level of ramifications that happens to you when you have a drink at your age. The first level is parental trust and disappointment. Now, I know growing up that meant a lot to me, and I know it does to you too. Think of the permanent damage that's going to happen. Again, I'm speaking to the kids, to that relationship with your parents by going out behind their back and enjoying alcohol. Think of things, privileges that your parents, because they're take-charge people and they're all here today, are going to do because you violated the rules and you broke the law. Think of losing the keys to the car. Think of losing, hopefully, access to the computer. Think of losing that cell phone. Think of losing the opportunity to text your friends. Think of the early curfew you're going to have because the parents are going to enforce the rules. That parental trust and disappointment, why would they trust you again? They're always going to wonder because you lied to them. They're always going to wonder what you're doing when you told them you were going to do something else and you really drank alcohol. Trust is what I was talking about with parents. What about with the police? One of the things that the police look at when they talk to somebody, God forbid if you wind up having to talk to the police, perhaps you get in trouble, you're stopped. One of the things they're going to know about you when you're stopped from then on is that you've been arrested for whatever, an alcohol-related offense, a DUI. And subconsciously they're going to know that you're somebody who got arrested for that offense. It's going to affect your credibility. It's going to affect law enforcement's view of you because you've been arrested for that particular offense. Work, summer jobs. If you're lucky enough and you worked hard and you scored that great summer job, think they're going to want to keep you there if they know that you're somebody who goes out and gets arrested for using alcohol or somebody who drinks on a regular occasion illegally when you're not supposed to? What about something maybe more practical? Insurance. Let's say you get that alcohol offense and you're arrested for that. Maybe your parents help you with the insurance. Maybe you are responsible and you have to pay it yourself. What's that insurance rate going to do when you have that an alcohol-related offense? And why do insurance? And why do the police come down on you? Because alcohol use causes you to think wrong and you make bad decisions when you're using alcohol. Okay, the school finds out. The school finds out maybe that you were using alcohol. Suspension, possibility. Expulsion, maybe if it was at a school event. At certain schools, I've seen it happen. Detention, certainly, in the right circumstance. What about entry into college? Your whole path, that path from where you are now to where you want to be, your goal in life, your job, your career, the thing you want to do, gone because of a bad decision with alcohol, perhaps. The choice of career can be changed. The amount of money you can make in the future, one bad decision can be altered. Socially, friends, think about it. Think about what happens. You can make perhaps a fool of yourself with what you're doing. You know, I can like list the names of people who I went to high school with who got into those situations and then, you know, got sick, embarrassed themselves at a party because they decided to drink when no one else was or when other people weren't. You remember things like that. The perceptions that go along with somebody who drinks on a regular basis. You think your friends' parents are going to think you're a good influence on them? You think your friends' parents are going to want you, oh, go hang out with Paul, because Paul was arrested for drinking and driving, or Paul was arrested for possessing alcohol. You think there's somebody that they're going to trust with you, maybe stay out after curfew? No, they're not going to, because they know that you're someone who's going to use alcohol, and alcohol use leads to bad decisions. Health, and this is, you know, obviously there's long-term effects from using alcohol. That's not what I'm talking about, but I'll tell you a quick story. I met a young girl, just a vibrant, intelligent go-getter, years above her age, clearly headed for big things. And she was going to the biggest public college in the state of Illinois, and she was in a sorority, and the sorority had, it was like a Parents' Day event, and maybe around noon, she had one beer. and she was 20 at the time. She had one beer, folks, and somebody slipped her, well, in our time we would have said slipped her a Mickey. Somebody put a little of a date rape drug into her cup of beer, and that changed her life, because it was, she wound up waking up hours later, clothes disheveled, assaulted. One beer. Alcohol leads to bad decisions. She drank that beer and it changed her life. Again, you know, the pregnancy rate among kids who use alcohol, the teen pregnancy rate is elevated. You know, bad decisions with use of alcohol, STDs, use of alcohol. You know, the wild and crazy, as the media portrays it, behavior with use of alcohol. How many times do we have to hear about horrible things happening, from skitching to barroom brawls to all the events that happen when people decide to use alcohol, particularly young people. And perhaps, and this was referred to earlier, alcohol is a gateway drug, and people can say it's not, but it is. Alcohol generally leads to use of other drugs, most typically marijuana, and then to other drugs, heroin. And I can tell you, from having been, this is not as a judge, from having been a prosecutor in the drug unit, that people want to go for that next high, that next wilder high, and then they do something silly like they try heroin, and they're done. They're done. But for really good professional counseling and the determination and decision making to get there, they're done. Their future's done. And guess what? It's not just you, it's your whole family under those circumstances, whose lives is permanently changed because of that. So then you have these drinks, you get arrested. State's Attorney Berlin talked about some of the ramifications in terms of zero tolerance, possession of alcohol, not just consumption of alcohol. You have a beer, you're under 21, it's open, the police have you. Possession of beer, suspension of your license, folks. The municipality actually sends that down. It's possession of alcohol, and that can lead to either a 3 or a 6 month suspension of your license. God forbid, aggravated DUI. Not only are you messing up your not only are you messing up your own life, but you take somebody else with you. And guess who it usually is in the circumstances where you're driving a car and somebody else gets hurt? It's usually the person you're with. It's a friend or a family member who's with you, God forbid. You talked about the costs, the opportunities lost. Alcohol leads to bad decisions. Now I'm going to come full circle for the parents here. Kids, you can kind of not listen, or at least don't remember some of this stuff. You know, this is just common sense stuff. I've had the opportunity to work with a bunch of different social workers and volunteers in a couple of different programs. But I have some parenting tips that relate to alcohol, and here they are. First of all, be nosy. Be nosy. It's your house. It's your car. They're sleeping in your house. Be nosy. Look around. Look in your child's room. Look in your child's bag. Look in your child's closet. Look in your child's purse. Look and know and understand these things. You're doing it for their sake. Be nosy. Don't be an enabler. And you see this in court. I'm not necessarily talking about me. You see this in court. Obviously, you have high expectations for your kid. Hold your kid to those expectations. Expect them to do the things that they should be doing. And let them know firsthand from you, before they even hear from the police or the school, let them know that there are serious ramifications to their actions. Your kid is going to a party? Maybe this weekend. Your kid's going to a party? Pick up the phone. The phone is your friend. Call the parents. There's no alcohol that's going to be served, right? Exactly which parent is going to be home at that party while the party is going on? If they say none, say, well, who should the police talk to if they come to your house during the party then? Make it clear that you expect them to take their responsibilities. Ask the tough questions. Talk to your kid. Talk to your kid. Look them straight in the eye and ask. And here's an important part of that. Listen to the answer when they answer. Listen for perhaps a partial truth or a half-truth as the answer. Stay up when they're out. Meet them at the door when they come home. You'll know, is there alcohol involved? Then enforce the rules. Remember who your kid was with. Call the parents the next day. If you suspect there was alcohol involved, you make sure those other kids' parents know you can be preventing something later on. Ask them what they're going to do when they go out, and then check up on them. Know your kids' friends. really, and this is one of the most important things you can do, know who they are, know who their parents are, meet them, talk to them. You got a question, call the parents. If you don't like the answer, follow your judgment. Often you're right. You're the parent, enforce the rules. And bar your kid from hanging out with anybody who you think they shouldn't be hanging around with. And I know that's a tall order. I'm a parent too. Follow through with it though. And by the way, if the kids who your child is hanging, if the kids who your teen's hanging out with doesn't come around, if you don't know them but you hear about them all the time, that should be a sign. That should be a sign to you. If they're not coming around, again, I was part of the gang and the drug unit, that's one of the first things we teach with, you should have that's a big red flag to you. Could it be a gang member? Well, I mean, that's one sign of gangs along with a myriad of other. Could it be someone who's using drugs? Sure. Bad behavior? Sure. Alcohol? Sure. That's a red flag if your son or daughter is hanging out with somebody who they're not bringing around the house. You should be looking for that. Be a parent and don't be a pal. Enforce the curfew and follow through. Pull the computer, pull the phone, pull the texting, pull the car keys, follow through with it. And be a good example. And once again, listen. One more tip, and this is just kind of a practical one, is have a lifeline for them under circumstances where things are going bad. Maybe they've made a bad decision. They're either at a party and they got to get out of there and they haven't done anything wrong, or they're at a party and they have done something wrong. They're drinking. What I mean by that is so that they don't have to say, "Mom, I'm at a party and they're drinking." Have something set up. Say, "Look, you call me and say a code, how's grandma," or something, and they get a call from you with some lingo where they don't have to, in front of everybody, say, "Mom, somebody's drinking," and then that peer pressure will kick in and they'll be embarrassed. Be ready with something like that where no matter what you're doing, you'll drop everything and you'll give them a safe ride home. I know I rambled on a little bit, but that's all I have for you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Judge Marcucci. He did a very good job giving some parent tips and also some team tips. I wanted to go to the next speaker, which is Tasha Lukens, and she is from the Secretary of State. Tasha?
Thank you. Smooth transition. Okay, before I get started, there's a couple things that I'd like to mention. First off, as a parent of a young adult, if that young person is under the age of 18, you have access to their driver's record. Okay, you have access to their driver's record online. But the point I want to make, it's not only in their best interest, but it's also in your best interest that each of you monitor your own driver's records. And this is something that you should be doing on a regular basis, because I will tell you mistakes happen. Everyone has two records with the Secretary of State's office. There's what we call an internal abstract and an external. In other words, there is a private record and a public record. The private record shows everything. You receive a court supervision, it is on that private record, the internal record. The public record is what is given to employers and to insurance companies. As mentioned previously, there are certain things that remain on a record for life. Moving violations such as that speeding ticket, those type of violations, as long as you do what you're supposed to do, pay your fine, go to court, those things will be expunged from your record after anywhere from around 2 to 8 years. It will be taken off your record. I'm just going to turn this off, okay?
It's the speaker above you. Step back.
Okay. Step back. However, as long as you do what you're supposed to do, they will be eventually taken off your record. There are certain things that remain on that record for life. DUI, as mentioned previously, remains on your record for life. It is never taken off. But, in addition to that, any drug or alcohol violation remains on that record for life. That will also include zero tolerance. That includes refusing to submit to a breathalyzer test. That includes an open container violation. All of those things remain on a record for life. In addition to that, street or drag racing will remain on that record for life, leaving the scene of an injury or fatal crash, and of course, reckless driving and reckless homicide. Those are all things that remain on a record. They all become history items. So if there's a problem in the future, a hearing officer with our office can see it, as well a drug and alcohol evaluation counselor. They'll be able to see it. Open container. The definition of an open container is the illegal transportation of open alcohol in that vehicle. But you need to read between the lines here, because an open container is viewed as when that alcoholic beverage is no longer in its original package, or when that seal has been opened or broken. 6-pack of beer, 1 can missing from that 6-pack, even if that can is rolling around on the floorboard of that car, to an officer can be viewed as an open container. You have 4 people in a vehicle, you have 1 open container, who gets the ticket? The driver is responsible for whatever happens in that vehicle. It doesn't matter if it was a passenger that took it, 1 for the road. The driver will, if they're under 21, lose their driving privileges for 12 months. If they're over 21, if they're 21 or older, it's a lot of points, and can make the difference between a 3-month suspension and a 4-month suspension or longer. However, you have 4 people in the vehicle, you have 1 open container, who can get the ticket? An officer can ticket every single person in that vehicle for open container. The driver...
We'll answer questions after.
Yeah.
Keep your questions. I'm sure we'll have them all answered.
Yeah, I'm told I usually generate a lot of questions. The driver will most assuredly have that ticket, will have it against their driver's record. Everyone else will receive a monetary fine. It will not go against the driver's record. Okay. I mentioned previously fake IDs. The state of Illinois identifies fake IDs in 2 specific categories. They're either going to be fictitious or fraudulent. One of the things that I do with the Secretary of State's office is, aside from doing training programs for DUI, ZT, and GDL, I also do training programs on how to spot a fake ID. I had one this morning for the city of Aurora. Just so you understand, a fictitious card is a card that was originally made by a governmental entity, and there's something wrong with it. It either does not belong to the bearer, to the person that is using it. They're using their older brother or sister's ID card or someone else's. Or it was a card that was obtained from a Secretary of State's office under false pretenses, using someone else's information or fake information. For having a fictitious card, for having one, for using one, for attempting to get one, or, my favorite, for assisting someone else. You loaned your card out to someone else to use, or information to someone else to get one. It is a Class A misdemeanor first conviction that fines up to $2,500, possible imprisonment of up to a year. If it is a subsequent conviction, it's a Class 4 felony. As mentioned previously, that's 1 to 3 years and fines of up to $25,000. A fraudulent card is a card that was made somewhere else. Someone whipped it up on their trusty computer, someone ordered it over the internet. Huge problem. Try this sometime, not order one. Go to a computer, type in fake ID. Do you have any idea how many sites you're going to get? We're talking millions. There are even sites out there that will tell you who's got the best product and how much it's going to cost you. And you cannot tell me that young people don't know about that. They do. For having a fraudulent card, for having one, for making one, for selling one, or having sophisticated equipment, security equipment to make one, It is a Class 4 felony for the first conviction. A subsequent conviction is a Class 3. That's up to 5 years in prison and fines up to $25,000. Now, the bottom line here, when it comes to the use of a fake ID, when it comes to the use of a fake ID to obtain alcoholic beverages, these type of penalties don't usually come down. Of course not. Because there's usually not even an arrest. That young person tries to get into that nightclub, person looks at the card, looks at the person, this isn't you, get out of here. And they hold on to the card. Or they try to buy that alcohol in that store. That clerk looks at that ID card and quickly determines that ID card is fake. And they tell that young person they got lost. In the state of Illinois, the Secretary of State's office does not need an arrest. We don't need a court case. All we need is a police report. That ID card is sent over to the local police. They make out that police report, it's sent to our office, and we will suspend the driving privileges of that young person for 1 year. It is an administrative process, and we are doing it. Zero tolerance. I'm going to end with this. The state of Illinois has two, not one, but two different zero tolerance laws. The first one affects only the driver of the vehicle. As mentioned before, any driver that is pulled over for a traffic violation that has been determined to have any amount of alcohol in their system whatsoever, and they're under the age of 21, first thing the officer asks for is the driver's license. They know by looking at it that person is under 21. They smell alcohol in that young person's breath, or from their mannerism feels that person has been drinking, can then request a breathalyzer test or any other test for alcohol. If there's even a trace, that young person will lose their driving privileges for 3 months if it's their first time, 12 months if they've done this before under the age of 21. And if they refuse to submit to that test, those suspensions are doubled. 3 becomes 6 months, 12 becomes 24 months. The really hard part about this law is this too is an administrative process. There is no court case. They cannot go to court to fight that suspension. They can go to court to fight whatever traffic violation it was that pulled them over, but they cannot fight that suspension in court. The only recourse that person has to see one of our cheerful hearing officers. That is it. The second zero tolerance violation is for a violation of the Liquor Control Act of 1934. And that is for the illegal possession of alcohol, consumption of alcohol, purchase of alcohol, or receipt of alcohol. That means someone else gave it to them. They're underage, they cannot have it. If they're given a court supervision for any of those charges, that should tell you there's some type of a hearing. They will have their license suspended for 3 months. If they are convicted, first conviction, 6 months suspension. If it's a second conviction for that young person under the age of 21, it's a 12-month suspension. And if they haven't learned a thing, they end up with another conviction. It is a revocation of driving privileges. Huge difference between suspension and revocation. A suspension is for a period of time. It's temporary. A revocation means there's complete loss with no guarantee they'll ever get that privilege back again. One of the things that I really enjoyed hearing earlier was the mention that a young person, if they are caught DUI, they could be faced with zero tolerance, Liquor Control Act violation, and that DUI. And here's a clue, parents. If that young person is out driving beyond their restricted driving hours, they are driving without a license. In this state, what happens? If they get a DUI without a license, that's an aggravated DUI, which is a class 4 felony. Something to think about.
Thank you, Tasha. Officer Mike Somerville, who's at both north, east, and west in regard to resource. Wrap this up kind of quickly here because we've got a lot of talking and you
questions.
Yep, got a lot of questions.
Good evening. I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to tell you, the people that are not here, they're dumb parents. They are. Let's face it. I've been a cop for 30 years. Yes, I'm old. And yes, I've been around. When I first started 30 years ago, I go out there and I aggressively went after drunk drivers. I went aggressively after underage drinking. I went aggressive after smoking. A lot of times we call and go, what are you doing? Why are you doing these? These kids are not hurting. They're learning. They're being taught by their parents how to be responsible drinkers. So I continued on, doing my job, going after the drinks, drunk drivers, going after the alcohol consumptions, and I still go, why? Then I started getting into being an accident investigator, dealing with accidents, being called to fatal scenes, being seen at scenes where a drunk driver had killed a 17-year-old while he was driving or riding his bicycle to work. The drunk got out of the car and said, it's his fault. It's his fault for riding that bicycle the wrong way. I'm like, excuse me? It's your fault. You're the drunk. You're the one that had the drinks. You're the one that went out there behind the wheel. I didn't force him. But think about it. I've been doing this for a long time. Parents have come up to me and go, well, I'm teaching them to drink responsibly. Several years later, these parents are going, I don't understand why Johnny or Joni is an alcoholic. I was teaching them to be responsible. Yes, I had the parties at my house. Yes, I had the keys. I kept the keys. Yes, I did this. I don't understand why they're an alcoholic. The brain's still developing. The brain is growing. They're still being dumb kids. Let's face it. Alcohol is very responsible. Nah. Is alcohol a contributing factor to a lot of domestic batteries? A lot of batteries, a lot of armed robberies, a lot of crimes are being committed because somebody consumed alcohol. A couple quick facts before we open up for questions. I called the surrounding towns that I work in. I said, tell me, how many number of cases have you guys had for possession of alcohol? Between Wheaton, Carroll Stream, Glen Ellen, they said 74 cases. Now, 74 cases don't tell me how many kids were arrested. Then I go, well, okay, tell me how many cases of consumption of alcohol in 2010. 288 cases of consumption of alcohol by a minor. Now, I can tell you, before I became a school officer, one case, I had 48 arrests for underage drinking. Think about it. These are just cases. Then I go, tell me, of those cases, how many were DUIs under the age of 21? 344 DUIs in 1 year. I'll tell you, the biggest one was Carroll Street with the underage drinking and DUIs. Then I go, tell me, how many zero tolerance? Well, there was about 23 cases of zero tolerance. But think about it, cases, consumption, 288. Again, the parents who are here are smart parents. And again, like the panel said, you guys don't need to hear all this stuff. It's the people out there that are allowing people to have parties. Again, I had the best job as a school officer. I never went to prom in high school. I never did. I was on the football team, I was on the wrestling team, I never went to prom. Broke up with my girlfriend before prom, so I never went. But I never went to prom. I went to 6 proms already since I've been here. 6 proms, 6 high school graduation parties and everything. And think about it. I sit there and I watch. Many of your teens will be going to prom. Let's see. I go to prom Saturday for Glenbard West. Yes. And you know what? I worry about some of the people. They go there for about an hour and a half. All of a sudden, I come seeing their parents pull up in the vans and the big cars, you know. I go, what's going on? Oh, we're going up to the Lake Cottage. Oh, that's all right. Are you going with your kids? No, they're going. Think about that. Would I love to go and search that car and see what may be in it? And a lot of the lake cottages and everything may be in Michigan, Wisconsin, all over. I don't know. Again, I have a son that's 17 years old who goes to Glenbard West. He's going to be a graduating senior. And he tells me all this stuff. Dad, this is what's going on. He played football, he wrestled, and thank God that he decided that, hey, listen, I don't want to do any of this stuff. I want to be an athlete. And I coach wrestling. And I understand that. Part of my job every Monday morning is to go and look in every arrest file in Glendale Heights and see, okay, here, oh, Johnny. Oh, Johnny's a star baseball player. Johnny's a star football player. Oh, Johnny is on varsity. Johnny signed a contract. Johnny doesn't get to play football for a while. Think about it. Again, I want to thank you all for coming. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us.
Why don't we go ahead and open it up for questions? Anybody got any questions over here? Yes.
Question on one of the slides is they always talk about some kind of points, valuable points.
The question is, one of the slides talked about points, and that's points against your driver's license.
Every moving violation has points assigned to it. The state of Illinois operates, and this is what most people are familiar with. If you're 21 years old or older, it's 3 convictions for moving violations within a 1-year period of time results in a suspension. What they do is each moving violation has points assigned to it. They total the points up, and that determines the length of suspension. If a driver is under the age of 21, it is 2 convictions within a 2-year period of time. Once again, points are assigned to each violation. They total up, determines the length of suspension. Open container is a lot of points.
Does it also add up to those red light cameras?
Red light cameras?
Red light cameras. Red light cameras are what we refer to as P tickets. They're handled similar to parking tickets. It's not reported to our office unless you don't pay your fines, and you end up with, I believe, what is it 3, and it turns into a suspension. It's then reported to us, and they suspend your driving privileges. There's 2 different types of suspensions I had mentioned. One is when there's money owed. The only way of lifting that suspension is by paying. And the other type of suspension is for a determined length of time, like for the 3 convictions within 1 year, or for 0 tolerance, or for DUI, for the arrest. If you're caught driving on those type of suspensions, it takes the initial suspension and doubles it.
Any other questions? I have one question for the state's attorney, Berlin. What happens if you find you come home from a party and your kids are drinking, or you find kids that are drinking? What do you do?
You have a responsibility to stop it. You call, you find out who these kids' parents are, you call them, tell them to come pick up their child.
Do you call the police?
Immediately.
Do you call the police?
I tell people to call the police. I call the police all the time. Feel free. We're in the neighborhood. We're not doing anything. We'll come.
Because I get a lot of questions. I don't want my kid to get in trouble. Want this? We've got a judge here. We've got a state's attorney here. I always tell parents, call the police. You need to keep your kids safe, and I think that's an important question. At the time, the police can make some determinations about what to do. State's attorneys can make some decisions about what to do. Judges can make some decisions. These are ways to get people involved and your kids involved. And this is not just also about punitive pieces, and I think that's an important piece just to remember. Any other questions? Yes, go here.
Yes, ma'am.
My daughter is not in high school. She's an 8th grader. But are there assemblies or things like this done in the high school so the students hear this information?
Yes, it's done in health class. They talk about it. Doug has talked, I know, to high school students, things like that. So yes, in some of the classes they have. But again, the state has cut a lot of the budget. So there's also, I think the number one thing is substance abuse prevention for teenagers.
Can I respond to that? Thanks. And actually, there's a program, when I was at the State's Attorney's Office, some of the drug dealers' money, what we would do is we would allow schools to apply for and get a grant to take money from drug dealers and put on an anti-drug/alcohol program. It's kind of good use of bad money. And State's Attorney Berlin actually just did that a couple of weeks ago, and actually they wanted to take enough money from drug dealers that they were actually able to pay for the entire amount that was requested by every school. Did Glenbard North request any?
Yes, tell him, all 4.
Yes. Over $16,000 the schools received in grants, and all 4 Glenbard schools did receive a grant of up to $500.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, got a couple more. Right here, teen, I think we have.
If someone in your car has possession of marijuana, who is in trouble?
Someone's in your car, has possession of marijuana, who gets in trouble?
I can answer. In the state of Illinois, they have what they call constructive possession. Constructive possession, if I can prove that you could reach that cannabis, you get arrested. And so in that case, everyone in that car would get arrested, and everyone would be arrested, taken, and brought to the station. Now, sometimes chivalry is dead, and the guy will, it's not mine, it's not mine, and the girl will go, it's not mine, get died. You both get arrested. It's called construction possession. If it's there, and you can reach it, you have access to it, you're guilty.
But if someone claims it, like say I'm driving and she has it and she claims it,
what if someone claims it and they say it's mine? What do we do?
Okay, if the person that claimed it driving?
No.
Okay, well.
Person that claimed it's driving is not driving. What do we do?
Well, that person will get arrested.
That person would get arrested.
Yeah.
What about the driver?
What about the driver?
Well, we're going to call your parents. We're going to say that you're in a car with somebody that got arrested for cannabis. Come get you. And
good questions.
Thank you.
Could I follow up on that one too?
Sure, go ahead.
Never put a microphone near a judge. And actually, that car that you're driving, or that the driver was driving, probably not his car anymore. The car is going to be subject to forfeiture. And there's going to be an administrative fee, a towing fee. The car will be towed, and perhaps, depending upon the circumstances, if it was used to facilitate the drug use, it could be forfeited. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Previously, you were showing slides, specifically the person on the end there. Do we have access to those slides?
State's Attorney Berlin.
Access in terms of you want a copy of
yes, please.
What's in there. As far as the ones that detail the laws, if you want to call the office. Some of these we could give you. Okay.
Yes.
If teen was pulled off, do you have the right to search a car?
If the teen was pulled over, do you have the right to search a car?
It certainly depends. It really depends on all the circumstances. But if an officer has reason to believe that there's drugs or alcohol in the car, yes. The answer is yes.
Or if there is no violation, if they were
or stopped for whatever reason with no violation, you have the right to search. No reasonable cause.
What typically would happen is the officer will ask if they can look in the trunk, if it's a trunk issue. If that young person says no and they still feel that there's something wrong, they can have that car impounded and wait for a court order to then search it.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
If you go get a call and go to a house, and are you allowed to just walk in? Can you say, I need to come in and see what's going on? Or can you not do that if there's a party, let's say, or that's what the call is for? Can you just go into someone's house?
So can a police officer, when they could, is they talking about a police officer, ma'am? Okay, so if anybody gets a call, my kid's in the house, there's a party going on there, can I just walk in?
Is that right?
We got the big ones up here.
Well, it depends on what you're saying. If I don't have X-ray vision, but if I walk in and I start seeing all the kids on the driveway,
Yes.
they have alcohol, they all.
You don't see alcohol.
Okay, well, again, if whatever I can see, if I can see and reasonably articulate, right? That I see something, I know something from my experience, and I know it's something going on. We can get a search warrant. We can get permission from a parent. We'll call you and say, hey, listen, you know your son and daughter is having a party, and this is all going down. Or what we have in Glendale Heights is that parents go on vacation. What they do, they fill out a permission to search form with our department. Gives us permission to go in there and search their house to make sure anything's going on.
So they can walk in at that time.
So if can I just follow up on that?
Sure. Okay.
If there was a party, there was drinking, you're arresting kids or whatever it is you do, I don't know, arrest might be a strong word, I don't know, and there happens to be a parent there upstairs. I mean, I know of these situations, so I'm giving an actual example where a parent was home, knew they were having...
They knew they were having a party.
Right.
And they knew they had alcohol.
Does that parent also get arrested?
Yes.
Always?
Only a parent?
Always.
Always. Well, again, if I know the parent knew about it, like they ordered the alcohol, they got the alcohol there, they knew that the kids were out there downstairs drinking, yes, they would be arrested.
What if they say they didn't know?
Again, now we're going to get into specifics, and I think you can go ifs and ifs and ifs, and I think it also depends on the police officer, because I've heard these stories myself many different times. So I think it also depends back again on, and to follow up the next day and do that. I think we should take that particular question offline.
All I can tell you, in that last situation, these guys get paid to make the decisions. These guys will look at it, will determine who can articulate the facts, who is more believable, and who will, prevail in that case.
The question is when it's too far in regard to snooping. There's something called the FBI, Family Bureau of Investigation, that I use to talk about the Family Bureau of Investigation, so the FBI. You have to, you're the parent. I think what the judge said is really good. You're in charge of the house. It's your, it's not their room. They don't pay the mortgage. It's your car. So again, it goes to being able to develop a sense of ownership and what that looks like. I do believe in being visible, following things. Kids leave trails. I would always do kids' laundries as long as possible, because what you find in pockets is amazing. So I think that's an important piece. So what kids live around you can find. I don't think it's ever going too far. Okay, one last question.
What's being done in our area with regard to the kids underage drinking in parks and at the schools and like in the little alcoves and bushes and stuff? Because that's what I'm hearing the most about.
Well, here's what I can tell you. If people or neighbors complain and start reporting or sending us letters or anything, we in Tennessee, I know in Glendale Heights, we take a zero tolerance to everything in alcohol. And we go out there and we investigate it. We have officers in plain clothes. We have officers walking. We have officers there. Here's the one thing. I have a Facebook page. I'm a 15-year-old girl. And I have, and my other partner has made contact with other people, and they told us where the parties are. And they have befriended us, they have told us where this is going on, and again, we show up, and they still can't figure out why we show up. Yes. I mean, again, you got to figure out, kids think we're dumb, but we try to, try to be one up on them.
One more question way in the back there.
Earlier you said that we could monitor driving record online. Where do we do that?
Where can we monitor driving records online?
Only parents that have a young person that is just in the driver's license system, that's just getting that driver's license, they're given an access code. That parent, they're given an access code, and all you have to do is go to our website, and it will send you, website is cyberdriveillinois.com. It will then direct you to that point. I'm going to give you a little ammunition, parents. If you, in the state of Illinois, in order for a young person under the age of 18 to acquire, in order for them to get that driver's license, they must have driver's education. That's an old law. They must now have 50 hours behind the wheel experience in addition to driver's ed. But here's another old law that many parents aren't aware of. They have to have parental consent or consent of a legal guardian. And this is really important because you take that consent away, there's no driver's license. For any reason, that kid talks back to you, they didn't do their homework, they didn't clean their room.
You can cancel their driver's
All
license.
you have to do is write to us, registered mail, and say, I withdraw my consent. We will cancel that license. It's not a suspension, it's not a revocation. It is a cancellation. They'll be able to get a license again. But they're going to have to prove they had driver's ed, they're going to have to go prove they had the 50 hours, and they have to take all their tests over again and pay for a new license. And they have to have your permission. Or they wait until they're 18 when they don't need it.
On that note, we're going to kind of wrap this up. I want to thank very much for people coming out and our panel. Thank you, Gilda. Okay, so hang on.
We got raffle prizes. Okay, the winners outside.
Michelle,
I'm going to release our panel members because all of them, each one of these people has families waiting for them, and I cannot thank all of you so much for coming tonight to be with our families in the Glenbard community.